So all you hear about nowadays is how messed up the tech job market is and how it's impossible to find a job. I saw this CEO write something on LinkedIn, which kind of triggered me a little bit. He said it's the worst time to join a boot camp. It's a terrible investment and no one should do it. I wrote a newsletter about this subject, provided some facts, articles, statistics about why the job market is not great at all for really anybody. But at the same time, it's not like that bad that you should just never become a software developer, which is a insane idea to me. People didn't like that take at all, and I got a lot of pretty mean emails from it. But one of the things I noticed is from people that said, hey, I've applied to, 1,000 jobs, or I went to some free program and learned the basics of coding and now I can't find a job, is that they had a few key things that were wrong across their whole strategy. And I want to go over those things. So hopefully you don't fall into this bucket. Or if you do, at least you can do all these things and you can really say, hey, Brian, you're an idiot. None of this stuff works. It really is true that zero people are getting hired for coding, even with 250,000 jobs open and all the growth in the industry and the six-figure salaries. It's just zero people are getting hired, like zero, none at all. I went to boot camp. My friend went there. All the people that went, none of them are hired. I mean, just generally, when you think about that, I want you to do a mental exercise. I want you to think of the number of jobs that are open. Think about the future. How many more jobs will be open? Think about all the startups that are coming up. Think about all the AI tools that are getting built right now. And out of all those jobs, all the people that are getting older and moving out of tech, the average age of a software developer is around 40 years old. People tend to get into management, other roles that don't involve hands-on keyboard coding. And you think that about all these jobs and all these massive salaries within the United States, that there is zero chance that you will ever get a job. Sounds a little bit silly, right? I don't know. Come on. Use your head, man. Anyway, I want to go over your resume, GitHub profile, LinkedIn profile, projects experience, and why time and luck are important to hopefully save you some time. So off the bat, let's talk about your resumes and why they suck. People that are coming from a different career outside of tech or a CS grad, or people that are from non-traditional backgrounds that maybe were a French fry chef or, security or something that has nothing to do with coding and want to get into this profession, their resumes generally don't tell me or anybody else why we should hire them or trust them, which is really important. I was an engineering manager and helping build out my team. So I would look at resumes pretty often, actually. Went through at least a couple hundred just in the few years that I was doing it. And at every other company I've been, I've also helped in hiring as well. So I've seen a lot of people that have tried to transition into tech, and they generally make these mistakes where you don't trust them, right? You read their resume and there's like really nothing about coding except for in the summary where it's like, take a chance on me. Essentially, it follows this pattern of like, I want you to take a chance on me. I want you to provide me a learning opportunity. And here's some really basic stuff I know. And then that's kind of it. And it says like, first job, I work at McDonald's. And I'm like, well, this has made it insanely impossible to hire you. So what your resume should do at a high level is tell the person about the technologies you're using, use really strong language about what you've done to paint a story rather than just saying, I know AWS, or I know Java or Spring Boot, or I know TypeScript. That's great. That's kind of expected also. What did you do with those things and why is that interesting? So if you look at my resume, which might not be the best. I mean, I've gone over this thing a lot of times I follow this pattern. What did I do using technology? What was the outcome of using that technology? When I was engineering manager at Clorox, like here, I introduced unit testing with this technology that did this thing. And I follow that pattern throughout my resume. I think that's a generally good pattern to follow. And you might be thinking, well, what about me? I just went to, some no-name boot camp or something like that, or I self-taught and I don't know, I went the free route and don't have anything that I can talk about. You need to have something you can talk about. And we'll get into that in just a bit, because the kinds of project and experience you can get is what you're going to supplement your resume with. Now, I personally feel that you don't need to have anything about your former life on your resume unless it might be related. For example, maybe you were a lawyer or doctor, or maybe you worked in like some sort of field like education, which might lend itself to a resume for software engineering. Like, for example, maybe you were a teacher and you're going for like ed tech jobs. So having that you're a teacher on there might be really, really good. Or maybe you're a trucker going for like logistics tech jobs. That could be a really, really good sell right there. But if you did something like work in a warehouse or something like that, I just don't know if I'd put that on there. And who cares if it is? Like, what are they going to say? What did you do before? You could just say, well, what I did before that wasn't particularly relevant to this job. I did that. If you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see my job history only goes back down to 2013. And before that, I don't have anything on there because I wasn't doing the kind of stuff you can put on LinkedIn. during that time period. I'm 40 years old. So 2013, I was 30, right? So before that, I don't really have a life you can look at. And I just told people straight up, like, yeah, I don't have, all this stuff I did back then was not relevant. We never really dug into it. And people just kind of just went with that. So I would follow that same pattern. But it's really important that you have some experience on here, whether it's freelancing or your projects, talking about what you did, how is it important, what technologies you're using. That's going to be really helpful. Now for ATS, people have all these weird ideas about how you can beat the applicant tracking system. I'm going to beat ATS by just pumping my resume full of keywords and stuff like that. I don't doubt this could work, but I just don't think it does, because if it did, I would assume that everybody would just be doing that. I think generally you got to think, who's your audience for these things? Probably going to be a recruiter, probably going to be somebody that is not particularly technical. So what they need to see here are some keywords. So throughout the resume, you should have the keywords in the summary, in the core competencies or the technology. And then throughout the experience, you should have those same keywords. So if you use React, Node, TypeScript, Java, Python, those should be in every single place there for higher SEO value, for search engine optimization value, or in this case, applicant tracking system value or something like that. But you want to have this clarity and this consistency throughout it. So it says, yeah, here I'm a software developer. Here are the technologies I use. Stay away from things like I'm a junior developer, I'm a learning developer, I'm an aspiring developer that just needs a chance. No one wants to take a chance on you at all. Now, what about your GitHub profiles? People love to put links to their GitHub profiles, and I'll be completely honest, I don't really check out people's GitHub profiles, but when I do, it's almost always not in their favor. It's rarely in their favor that I look at a GitHub profile and be like, oh man, this is killing it. My big issue with having a GitHub profile that doesn't look really good, it doesn't have a project immediately on there that tells me a lot about you, is that I can just start poking around. And if you have anything in there that you didn't want me to see, like if I go to my site, I don't share my GitHub profile, by the way, for this very reason, because I don't really know what people want to see in here. I mean, what are they looking for? Do they think I'm a TypeScript developer? Do they think that as an engineering manager, I should be able to write such type of code? Like, let's go to a really bad repository I have. Like if they just went in here and they saw the very first repository on here, or maybe they just went down to a random one. They were like, oh, this is from 2023. What is this? Let me check it out. Well, this looks bad. I don't know. they could look in here and say, oh, what this guy do? He built this thing. Oh, and he's using class components with component did mount. Oh, this is awful. What the hell kind of junk is this? He has a var in here. Oh, this guy. What a terrible developer he is. We're never going to hire him. He calls himself an engineering manager. He used var. You see what I'm saying? So in my opinion, if you're going to have this, have it organized in a way that leads people directly to where you want them to see. Otherwise, they can poke around and find things you might not want and immediately have a bad opinion of you. So to me, the risk is high. The reward is very low, because if they don't know much about you and they already like you from your resume and LinkedIn profile, they're probably just going to invite you in anyway. So, I know there's a lot of people out there that encourage having these really optimized GitHub profiles. GitHub to me is what it is. It's a repository to store my work so I can have version control and other tools that I want to use to share my code and deploy it to the web. It's not like meant to be like a living resume, to me at least, because I have a lot of junk projects in there because it's my GitHub. I have a lot of personal projects in there. All the projects I've worked on for companies, you won't see in my personal GitHub because that's my personal GitHub. I mean, what the hell? Where did they get this idea from? That all your projects that you have out there should be these stellar things that people can look at and get some sort of insight into you as a human and developer. I think that's silly, and I think you should be cautious of what you have out there. One way you can get around this is by having private repos for things that are really junky and just organizing it in a way. There's tons of templates out there to do that I'm not going to get into, but there's tons of templates out there that can organize your profile in such a way that you say, here's like my top 3, and you point them directly to only the ones you really want. Again, to me, personally, I think this is more dangerous than it needs to be. LinkedIn, my favorite tool to use. I really do like LinkedIn, and I don't know why most of you don't. You hate LinkedIn with a passion. It's so fake and cringy. And there's a guy wearing a black polo shirt talking about what you should do on LinkedIn. Such a corporate shill. What a sellout. Here's the thing. LinkedIn is where professionals that can't hide behind anonymity are, and they have the real name out there along with their real company. To me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, tons of people on Twitter are the smartest dudes in the whole room. So smart with all their super hot takes. And I have the sneaking suspicion that most of them don't actually work as developers in the first place. Your LinkedIn profile probably sucks. Here's one that doesn't. I love Danny Thompson. If you don't know him, you really should. I mean, this guy is like the #1 influencer slash developer out there that is helping people out find jobs in tech. I'm not sponsored or anything by Danny. I just think he's really, really good. So this isn't going to be like a LinkedIn deep dive, but in general, people suck at a few things on LinkedIn. I look at their profiles and it doesn't immediately tell me what they do, why I should trust them. Same issues that are with your resume generally apply to LinkedIn as well. I think Danny has a really good profile, even though he's an influencer. He actually has one that's really more optimized for tech, which I think is awesome. So it says up here, he's a software engineer, brand ambassador, and then he has some of the top languages, frameworks, technology that he's familiar with. This is important. This is all searchable. Recruiters want to find you. They got to find you by having a searchable LinkedIn. He has 500 plus connections, which is really important. You have to have 500 connections, honestly, in order to be discoverable at all. But here's the other thing. I know developers that have like 0 connections and are always employed. That's because they have been on the market for a while. They have like enough clout and respect that they don't really need to be out there like that. So let's look at his about section. So here, I already knew he was going to do this, but he has the same technologies that are here. He has them in here. Really smart. Highly searchable, search engine optimized. Here are his featured posts. His featured posts are about him doing what he wants people to know about them. They're not super personal. It's about getting the job at places. It's about what he's doing. It's about him leading things, talking at things. He's talking about React query. He's talking about things that a recruiter or somebody that's in tech is going to say, oh, this person's a leader and they're talking about tech. When I look at people's posts and I see people complaining about the job market or saying I filled out 1,000 applications and everybody rejected me, or, oh, this person sucks, and all these negative things, what do you think that does to any recruiter or person that sees it? Do you think they're going to want to take a chance on you at all? Absolutely not. They don't know you. And your brand of humor might be funny to you and your friends or family, but to other people, they're looking at this like, I don't know you. I don't want to take a chance. You already are very junior. Do I really want to then go out on a limb and assume that you're going to be okay in an interview with my name on the line? No, absolutely not. So the posts that you have, the ones that should be pinned or featured, are ones that talk about technology. It doesn't matter if they have 1 like or 0 likes. They just need to be pinned up there. So that way, when a recruiter looks at this or somebody else that might want to hire you, they can say, oh, this person talks about this technology. It just helps build out your case and builds out your profile of like, yes, I am a developer person, right? The activity you have, not so important, but again, stay away from the negativity. This stuff is searchable. People are looking on this thing. You don't want to be a negative Nancy out there because no one wants to hire negative people. Who the hell wants to work with that? Not anybody I want to work with, at least. Now, let me get down to his experience. This is really good. And he does the same thing I'm doing, right? He did the thing. Here's the result. Here's the technology. Thing, technology, result. There's probably a way better acronym for that, but that is the pattern you really should be following. Migrated our code base from React Redux to React Query while maintaining code quality standards. He has numbers here. If you don't have numbers and things like that, that's okay. I mean, this is perfectly fine. He did the thing with this thing, and it led to higher quality, or at least he maintained the code quality. You don't need to have like a number for every single thing. Numbers are a little bit shady anyway. Like, how do you really prove that something was improved 322% if you're building something on your own? So, and his education, free code camp, cool. And he got some licenses and things like that. I think these are less important. Also here's the big thing. If you're on the coasts of the United States or increasingly anywhere in the United States, people don't really care about your education. So if you have like really lame education or something you don't want people to know about, just don't put it up there. No one really cares in the first place. They're going to go to an interview and they're going to interview you the exact same way. They're going to interview the person that went to Harvard. You're going to get the exact same interview, my friend. So I wouldn't worry too much about your education or lack thereof. Now, when it comes to experience, most of you don't have any experience. So how do you get experience? If you can't find a job that's willing to hire you, or you can't find like an internship somewhere, what do? Work. There you go. You work for free. You find cousin, aunt, sister, uncle, brother, whatever, mom, dad, somebody out there has a failed rap career, some singer, some artist, some hairdresser, somebody in your group that needs a website, and build that website for them. Work for free. Deploy the website. Get it out there. Buy a URL. Not a rule. Buy a URL. Deploy it. Host it somewhere. Ask them for a recommendation on LinkedIn. If you need to, have them get an LLC. Maybe get your own LLC. Hire yourself. Call yourself a freelance web developer, and then actually build a couple things. Build some stuff for free. Put it on LinkedIn. Say you're working at this place. When people ask you what you're doing, say, oh, I work for myself under this company and I have clients. And they say, is this a full-time job? No, it's not full-time. I'm just starting out, which led me to want to look for employment here because I really want a more full-time thing. But yes, I've built a few sites you can check out at this URL and this URL. Yeah, I mean, this is not simple, but it's also not impossible. Everybody wants free work. And if you really don't know who to find for free work, you can't find a single person that will let you work for free for them, go to Reddit and go to Entrepreneur. There's a lot of broke entrepreneurs out there. And they want to get free websites and things like that. So you can even reach out to people here. I mean, I'm all about this kind of stuff. I run a boot camp, and this is actually literally what I've been doing. I've been reaching out to people that have an LLC. If you have a startup and you're like, hey, I have a startup and you need some work, I'm happy to reach out and say, hey, we have students that are hungry for this kind of stuff and would like to work there. I've had some success doing this. I've also had a lot of weirdos and people that are just not really about it or don't have an LLC. If you don't have an LLC, I will not work with you because we really want that badge on a person's LinkedIn to show, yes, they actually work for some company, not just some dude out there. And we also want a recommendation. That would be my criteria for looking for people that want free stuff, is either that they have a business, some sort of LLC, some sort of brand name or logo you can put on your LinkedIn that proves you work for somewhere, and then have them give you a recommendation if your work is good. That alone should get you your foot in the door. And if nothing else, that could actually start you on an actual path towards freelancing that I won't get into here because I'm not a freelance expert at all. But I think that could be a really cool way to at least get some experience. Now, what about projects you could build? If you don't want to go the experience route and get like some real world experience for a variety of reasons, maybe you just don't want to work free. Maybe you're super opposed to working for free or something like that, or whatever. You need to have some sort of project that you can talk about that's a complex project. What should that project be? In my opinion, it should be full stack. It should be at a URL, just like the other one. It should basically follow all the same criteria as the free site, but just be a project that's for you. It should solve a real world problem. And it should use third-party APIs. Yeah, it needs to use all this kind of stuff. That's what you're going to talk about in the interview when somebody says, hey, tell me about a complex project you worked on. And you want to actually have a complex project you've worked on that you can speak about intelligently. Because it sucks when you get into an interview and they ask you and you say, oh, I used TypeScript one time. Or, oh, I had to learn JavaScript and it was really tough. That's not an interesting story. Say, well, I built and deployed a full stack web application at this URL. It used Stripe and a couple other third-party APIs that I had to integrate. And some of the difficulties I found was that when it was deployed, it was different than when it was on my local machine and I had to debug it and blah, 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 blah. Interesting story. The person immediately looks at you like, oh, I respect this person. I know what they're talking about. I get it now. Okay, on to my last point. And this one is not such a fun one. Time and luck are important. Time is going to need to be spent doing all these things. Your time is going to be different than somebody else's time. There's a lot of people that get hired really, really quickly, and they are the success stories we read about online. There are other people that never get hired for a variety of reasons, and I won't really bash these people at all because I feel really bad that they tried to get into this profession and have found zero luck. But I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever seen in my entire time doing this, which is only 10 years, but that's a significant amount of time. I feel like I've never seen a person that was talented and didn't stop applying that couldn't find work. I just have never seen it. I have not. And you can call me a liar or think I'm just blowing smoke or because I own a boot camp, I'm here to lie to you. It just doesn't happen. I've met people with very little talent that have been hired faster than people with CS degrees. There is luck involved, and it's an unfortunate reality that luck is involved. Now, here's the thing. You can't just be lucky and suck at what you're doing and expect to have a viable career. You also can't expect to be somewhat talented and not do any of these other things and just like spend, 6 months to even a year and just quit at the end of it. Your timeline is ultimately going to be your timeline. But what I really hate to see is when people do none of these things really, and they don't improve and iterate on what's going on, and they just fall off the map. So how do you keep improving and iterating? How do you know when your strategy is not working anymore? I would say that after maybe 100 applications and you get 0 callbacks, it's time to rethink your strategy. And Me personally, I would just pay somebody that knows what they're doing to do some of this stuff for me, whether that's hiring a resume writer or hiring a service that applies to jobs for you. I'm all about that kind of stuff. And this is certainly possible. This is more possible than most other things in life. This isn't like talking about becoming a multimillionaire or something like that overnight, or starting a business with drop shipping to become a millionaire, which a lot of people actually fall for. It's about learning a skill and getting a job in an employable field. It's not the craziest thing out there. Anyway, I always hope that's helpful. See you around.